Hai Syahdan. I cannot hear your voice.
Hello, Miss.
Oh, okay. And hello, Panji.
Hello, Miss.
Okay, how is everyone today? Okay, let's wait for Tiara and Faat 2 more minutes. So we'll start at 9:35.
Okay.
Okay, here Faat comes. Hai Faat.
Halo Kak.
Okay. Okay, let's start. Okay, so hello, good morning, everyone. We meet again in our bi-weekly debate training. So to start today, I actually want to start with a little game. Okay, so it's simple. I have a couple of stuff and I need you to guess the price. So the closest price will get a score. Okay. I'll prepare my notes to see who got the score and let's start the first stuff. Okay. Hot dog, how much is this stuff?
Is it dollars or rupiah?
Oh, it's in rupiah. Yeah, it's in rupiah.
15.
Okay, Panji 15.
30. 30,000.
Syahdan 30. 13.
Yeah, 30.
30, okay. Fat
25,000.
25. Okay. And the hot dog is 25,000. I can see Faat buys a lot of hot dog, yeah. So he knows the price.
In Pare, it's around on 13,000 in Pare.
13.
Well, yeah,
13.
yeah, 13. It's fake hot dog.
Yeah, well, everything in Paris is cheap. So okay, the next one. Burger, specifically Burger King. I don't know if Kediri has this.
50.
45.
45. Panji ya. Okay.
50. 50.
50. Fat.
40.
40. Okay. And the price is 22. So the closest is actually Faat again. So
Yeah.
2 points for Faat. The next stuff, a popcorn in a theater.
30.
This is pricey. 30, Panji? Okay. Hi,
40.
Tiara. We are playing a game to warm us up before we start the training. So we guess the price of the popcorn. And Faat, how's your guess?
12,000.
12?
12.
Clearly you haven't bought popcorn in cinema, yeah?
Yeah, I've never gone to cinema.
You only come to watch the movie and not buying the popcorn. Tiara, do
Yeah.
you want to guess the price of popcorn in cinema?
Well, I've never bought popcorn in cinema, but it may be around 35 to 35,000.
Okay, so 30, 40, 12, and 35. And the popcorn is actually 38. Well done, Tiara. Okay, Faat, 2 points, Tiara 1 point. We go to the last stuff. And it's this. 1 pieces of fried chicken. Only 1 piece.
I think it depends on the brand as well.
I believe this is Texas, AW, AW,
I don't know.
20.
20. Okay, Syahdan 20,
25.
Texas,
25.
lower than 20. Should I
You-
guess? Okay.
Yeah, you should guess, but you cannot use the same number as your friend. So you might want to guess 21 or 19 since Syahdan already got 20.
18.
18.
18,000.
Okay. Faat,
30,000, I think.
30.
It's
No,
It looks like
Texas isn't that
more delicious than, yeah.
Okay, so
looks
20,
great.
25, 18, and 30. And 1 piece of Texas fried chicken is 67.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
so the closest is again Faat. So clearly Faat knows the price around here, yeah? Okay, well done, everyone. I think we have all warmed up enough. So today in the training session, we're going to talk on how to build your argument literally, like how to start taking notes, how to start writing about your argument when you do a debate. Okay, so let's walk through the speaker one by one. Okay, so here it's for speaker 1 first, yeah? How to build the case. Okay, if you are the first speaker with the motion, this house regrets the increasing trend of pay later for lifestyle in youth. Okay, before we talk about as a first speaker, what would you write down? Let's talk about the motion for a minute. So anybody has any question about the motion? Is this philosophical or proposal? Regrets.
philosophical. Is it philosophical?
Yep, that's correct. Yara, so it's a philosophical motion, yeah. So we do not talk about the system of pay later. We do not talk about the system of debt collector, etc. We only talk about the philosophical ideas of debt. Okay, so anyone has any question about the motion? All right. If no, then what can you tell about this motion? What does this motion want you to talk about?
I think what's happening in today's youngster lifestyle about pay later And the definition of pay later itself?
Okay.
And in what aspect do they usually use pay later?
Okay, yeah. A first speaker will talk about that. And if you are a government team on this motion, do you support pay later or do you not?
Yes.
Okay, any other opinion?
I disagree.
Please
Disagree, yeah. So if you find a word regret
regrets.
on motion, it means that the government doesn't like it. The government wishes it to be not exist. Okay, so this house regrets, it means the government wish that there is no increasing trend of pay later for the youth. Okay, so that is what the motion wants from the participant to talk about, yeah. Okay, now Tiara has already mentioned a few points, a few good points. If you are the first speaker of government, first you talk about definition. Because pay later is a new term, yeah, it doesn't exist in 2010. You have to really make a good definition, a clear definition. So what does it mean? Do you talk about digital pay later like Kredivo, Akulaku? You feel free to give example for the jury and for the judge and your opponent to understand. And then we also want to talk about the lifestyle. So what the pay later is used for by the youth. Okay, what else? If you are the first speaker, what would you want to talk about?
How to do pay later?
Oh, okay. How to do pay later? Okay. Anything else? We haven't talked about anything important from the motion. Definition.
What's the pay later is?
Economic.
Sorry, what?
What's the pay later? What's the pay later?
What pay later is? It's the definition.
Oh yeah, it's the definition, I think.
Yep, there it is. The first word is definition. The important thing that the first speaker has to talk about is why regret. Yeah, so because as a first speaker, you have to first tell why the government regrets. You have to first explain what the motion wants. Nah, okay, so this is actually a note. So this motion is actually a real motion that I adjudicated. The debate was in Bahasa Indonesia, so I make the note in Bahasa Indonesia. But then again, even if I did a debate in English, I always make a note in Bahasa Indonesia because it's easier. Okay, anyway, you can see here, I'll give you some time to write, to read, and then please tell what you get from the note of the first speaker. I hope my handwriting is not that chaotic, so you still can get the word. Okay, so what do you get?
the youngsters
Mhm.
Have a death in young age, it means it can be dangerous for 10 years later from now.
Mhm. Okay. You see the first highlighted words, yeah, highlighted sentence here. What is this?
The teenager will make a bad habit.
Okay, so this is a background.
Background.
Yeah, the background of the motion. So if you are a first speaker of the team, you have to first tell about the background. So the background is a lot of youth following the trend of that to feel the lifestyle, and it usually happen between 15 to 25 years old, because after 25 you usually get married and you are not a youth anymore because you have responsibilities. So this is the first one, is a background. So if you become the first speaker, always write down the background first. Yeah, background can be a goal, what do you want for your country, or it can be a problem. Does the motion talk about problem or a goal? Nah, in this motion, we talk about a problem. The problem is pay later. That's why I write down problem here. Okay, so the background is the problem. Okay, and then next one. This, anak muda harus memikirkan masa depan. What is this?
Suggestion, solution.
Suggestion or what should happen. Gitu. What should
Yeah.
happen in society. Nah, because this does not happen, therefore we face a problem, and the problem is the youth doesn't think about their future. They only think about their lifestyle at the moment. Gitu. So we can also say this is as a goal. Jadi this is goal and this is problem. Yeah. Or background. Okay, some debater also say it status quo. So what exists or what happens at the moment currently in a real life, problem, background, or status quo. Okay, after you could also see the definition here, yeah. From this note, what can you tell about the definition? There is no definition of pay later, but there is one definition that you can find from the notes.
Budaya
Pay,
hutang.
budaya.
Mengetahui budaya
No,
hutang.
the definition is actually for the youth. Jadi when the government talks about youth, they talk about anyone between 15 to 25 years old. So here, this is the definition. Definition or limitation. So they want to limit the age between 15 to 25. So over those years, they don't talk about that. They don't talk about anyone who's in their 30, using pay later to buy car. They don't talk about that. They only talk about what happens between 15 to 25. Okay, now after the first speaker explain about background, goal, we start going into their argument. Yeah, their first argument is this. Okay, the first argument is this: urgency. Urgency means, why is this important? Why do we have to talk about this? So it's the role of the first government. From the note, what can you tell? Why do we have to talk about pay later?
Because of the impact in their future life.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's harmful.
It's harmful. Why is it harmful?
because they are still I mean like the underage, so it means they can earn money enough to pay the pay later.
Yep, that can be. So because they are still young, a young person, they usually do not have a good job yet. They also usually are not logical yet because they are not mature. So that is the urgency. Why we have to talk about this? Or if I become the first speaker, my urgency will be the youth that has a lot of debt will be a grown-up person with a lot of debt. So that's why we have to not support debt or pay later in the young age. So because imagine if you have debt since you are 15 years old, you might not be able to go to college because you have to pay off your debt, etc., etc. Okay, nah, this urgency, they have 3 points here, yeah. The first one is because the youth is still not mature. And then the second one's, the youth is still not wise to manage money or manage financial. And then this is actually a good one. That's why I highlight it and underline it. So the first speaker said that demotivated a youth to work because they can get anything they want using pay later. Like if we don't have pay later, we have to work hard, we have to work double job maybe, or we have to take overtime to be able to buy a new phone, for example. But because of pay later, we don't have to do all that. We just have to pay it upfront. So we use other people's money and we can pay it with our upcoming salary or upcoming fee of our job, and that can demotivate the youth to get a better career, to get a better paying job, etc. And that is a really good argument. Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Actually, that is only the structure of the first speaker. Sometimes, if you talk about proposal motion, we also the first speaker will also talk about justification. Okay. Nah, for example, if the motion is this house would ban any pay later to be used by the youth, gitu ya. You will have to talk about the justification. Jadi the justification you have to explain why banning pay later is good. Jadi kalau urgency, why the youth or why pay later is harmful for the youth. Justification, why banning pay later is good. Why banning pay later will bring more good to the youth. So for you who wants to be the first speaker, you get background, goal. In background, you talk about definition, limitation, and then urgency and justification. Nah, okay. Any question? Okay, wait, I have to pick up this.
Where is Miss Flory? I want to ask.
Okay, sorry,
Yes.
just got a phone call. Yep.
I want to ask
Mhm.
about the justification and urgency differences. So in the first argument, we have urgency, and which means that we also explain why it is important, why it is harmful for the youngsters. So it's like the effect of the pay later. So what's the difference between justification? Because in justification, we also explain why banning pay later is good. It means that because it is harmful. So it's like
Yeah, I get it. Actually, we do not talk about the impact in urgency. So you can understand the not the meaning and therefore the differences from the word urgent and justified. So urgent, you just have to explain, oh, why is this urgent? Why we should talk about this? And sometimes when you explain why we should talk about this, is that you have to explain the good and the bad. Oh, we have to talk about this because it's bad for our society. But why is it bad? You explain it in justification. So yeah, it's bad because A, B, C. So this is justified if we do this or if we do that. That's why justification usually only comes up mostly in proposal, because justification only exists when you want to do some action.
So urgency and justification is said by the first speaker or
Yep.
the first
By
speaker?
by the first only, yeah. If you talk it on second, it will be late. Jadi you will not get the point. The judge will not give you a winning point if you talk about urgency and justification gitu. Urgency kan, why is this important for us to talk about, ya? And if you are a government and you fail to tell to the judges and your opponent that this motion is important, you can lose the debate. So no matter how good your argument is, but if you fail to explain why is this important for us, you can lose. And this can be tricky if the motion is something like outer space, alien exploration, gitu-gitu. Usually your job to prove the urgency will be very hard. You have to first you have to make sure that it's urgent for us to know about alien, about other lives, other possible lives outside of the earth. Why? So you have to be able to explain that, and that after that you have to justify why we can put money into outer space exploration when we can use the money to feed the poor, for example, or build more schools. Usually the government will lose if they get outer space exploration, etc., etc. Okay, all right. So this is this first speaker, yeah. Let's move to the second one. Okay. Let's just directly go to the note. Nah, second speaker has easier job because they should only talk about argument. So their role is just tell the argument or tell a deeper version of urgency and justification. Nah, from the note you can see 3 or 4 argument at least, yeah. Let's walk through it. On this case, the goal is stated by the second speaker, and for some judge it could be okay. So the goal of the government, they want the youth to be more literate of financial matter. And their their argument is that using pay later is easy, therefore it makes the youth becomes more hedonistic or more hedonistic. But this speaker, the second speaker, they do not tell, they do not explain what happens if the youth becomes more hedonistic. Ya kenapa gitu loh? Is hedonistic a bad thing? Why is it bad gitu? So if you say something even as simple as, you know what, drug is bad for your body, you have to tell why. Why is it bad? And even if we use drug, what happened? Gitu. So don't forget to always explain that deep, yeah. And then the second point of argument is it's actually it's like the same argument actually. The youth becomes more royal. Okay, you also have to explain, yeah, and then why if the youth becomes more royal, what would it affect? And then he or she actually explained that if the youth becomes more royal, the death will block or will sabotage the future of the youth. This is a good argument, but be careful not to make a jumping argument. Jadi jumping tuh misalkan if we are not careful with money, we can end up in jail. Yeah, that's reasonable, but you cannot say that. You cannot say if we don't have money, we can end up in jail. You have to tell it like, if we don't have money, we can purchase food, we can rent a house, and therefore we cannot survive. But we will, as a human, we have instinct to always survive, and therefore we will do anything for food, and that can lead with no money, that can lead us to stealing the food. And if we get caught up in stealing the food, we can go to jail gitu. So you have to explain it in a chronological order, so it's not a jumping logic. Okay, and then he also said that the people around the youth will be affected. I am assuming like their parents, their friends, because their parents and their friends can be approached by the debt collector. And the last one, the productivity of the youth will decrease because they are spoiled by the death. Nah, if you see, this argument is actually just the deeper version of the first speaker, urgency and justification. Gitu. So it's like the continuation of the first speaker. Nah, so if you are the second speaker, this is just the structure that you have to write. So first argument, your first argument, and then your second argument, and then if you still have time, you can write about comparative analysis. Like what happened if the youth get a lot of pay later, and what happened if the youth does not have a pay later. So you can tell about that as well in your speech. Okay, so any question for second speaker structure?
Miss?
Yep.
I want to ask about in the note mentioned about outcome. It means the speaker needs to explain about the impact.
Yep, of course. And the impact usually will be on the second speaker. Gitu.
Okay.
Yeah. I will say that being a second speaker is the easiest job because you don't have a lot of role to fill in, and you will have a lot to talk about. So usually best speaker in a competition usually will come from first or second speaker. Okay, any other question? All right, let's move on to the last one. Not the most difficult, the trickiest speaker, the third speaker, yeah. Okay, I only write this much from the third speaker. Okay, so the structure for or the job of the third speaker is actually to compare or to compare everything between two teams. Yeah, we call it clash. That's why being a third speaker can be difficult because you need a very high working hours of debating to see the clashes, to see, oh, so they talk about this and our team talk about this, and this is why our team is better. Nah, it takes time to be able to see that point if you become the third speaker, but it doesn't mean that you cannot try. So to see clashes, you should write down everyone's big argument. Yeah, so you write down argument from your team and also from your opponent. And then you compare them and you tell the judge why your argument is better. So it's actually as simple as that. Now, while you compare your argument, when you comparing, you will state their argument, your opponent argument, right? Okay, they say that pay later is actually good because it stimulates youth financial condition, blah, 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 blah. You tell why it's wrong. But they don't realize that the youth usually do not have financial condition to begin with. They do not have a good job. They probably do not have any saving, gitu. And then you tell yours. On the other hand, our team said that pay later will this, gitu. And this is why our case is more upper hand. And while saying that, you can add more example, evidence. Okay. So if you are third speaker, usually your paper, if you go out into a debate chamber, your paper will be blank because your job is to write down everything that happens in the room. Yeah. While the first and the second speaker will have their note full of their notes, the third speaker usually will only have like, what is our team's goal and what is our big argument. Gitu. Okay, so any question for the third speaker?
About the evidence and facts, can we mention it in the first speaker? Can we mention?
You can, but it cannot be too specific because the first speaker usually they only cover like moral argument, philosophical base gitu, kayak ya it's normal for youth to follow a lifestyle because human always wants to be accepted by the society, gitu. For example, for someone in a new environment, they will usually adapt by talking the same thing or dressing as their friends, gitu, but not too specific. So not like data, gitu. It usually will be brought up by the second or the third speaker. But you can give evidence like in which country the pay later is very popular, gitu. Okay, any other question? All right, if no, let's see. Okay, if no, I have this. So this is an UDC exhibition round from 2020. We're going to watch the debate. And I need you guys to write down the argument from the speaker that you like. So, for example, if you want to be a first speaker, you can only write down the first speaker of the government, gitu. And then if you think third speaker is interesting, you can write down only the argument from third speaker of government or the speaker of opposition. But you have to take notes using this structure, yeah. So try to find, what is the background, what is the goal, what is the urgency, what is their argument, do they give comparative analysis or not, and what is the clash if you write down the third speaker. Okay, one speaker will only talk about 7 minutes. So is that clear? Can I go? Any question?
Should we write down our rules? Maybe like as my role is the second speakers, or we write down all of the rules.
You take notes on what they speak. Jadi, for example, Faan, because you are second speaker, you want to write down the argument from the second speaker. You can choose government or opposition. Okay. Is it green? Can we go?
Yes, Miss.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Oh, you might want to write down the topic first. Motion, I mean. This is the motion. This house would require prospective parents to obtain a license as a condition to have children. So if you want to have children, you have to have a license first, gitu. Jadi surat izin menjadi orang tua. And that means you have to take tests.
Round for National Diversity Debating Championship 2020. Thank you for all of the speakers for consenting to be recorded and be a part of the accreditation test that will take place next week. The motion before the House today is this House would require prospective parents to obtain a license as a condition to have children. To open the debate, I would like to welcome the Prime Minister. Hear, hear.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a child who is born in a household with a physically and verbally abusive mother and an absent father, I know damn well that becoming a parent is not an inherent right that belongs to everyone, but it's a privilege that you need to obtain and you need to earn it, ladies and gentlemen. This house believes that a government should be able to regulate and decide who can have a children and who cannot based on several mechanisms. What we propose here that we have a mental assessment towards prospective parents. So if you want to have a children, you need to undergo an assessment first. What we're going to look into is first, history of anger management issues. Secondly, openness towards changes or opposing views. For example, sexuality, religion, standard of success, definition of what a desirable work field is, etc. And then history of domestic abuse in that household. If for example, that household has a history of where the husband is physically abusive towards the wife. And then secondly, the parents have to complete parenting classes provided by government, and they need to pass the minimum score. And then we're going to also have a mechanism where we will be able to revoke their license once there's been proven that there is a abuse that's happening or they're unfit to become a parent. And we'll also willing to give a license towards some people that failed at the first hand, but the second round they able to prove that they are fit to become a parent at the end today because we acknowledge the fluidity of human nature. The world where we're going to impose this is this is the fiat that both sides need to acknowledge that public facilities is adequate provided by government, for example, education, healthcare, and then foster care is there, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we see a world right now where there's a massive cases of abuse towards children, physical, verbal, and mental abuse. We see children getting beaten up every day. We see children being mocked by their parents, said that they're stupid, that they're an idiot, and they're fat, and they should not exist in the world, ladies and gentlemen. We also see a world where there's unrealistic restrictions towards your children, where there's an unrealistic imposition of standards of success by their parents, especially in Asian community, where they demanded to when it's a boy, they have to be straight and act manly, and when they're a girl, they have to be submissive and girly. Our goal here is simple. We want to minimize those abuse. We want to minimize those atrocities. And because everyone is not born to become a parent, it's not an inherent trait. In my speech, I'm going to bring up several principal justification. Firstly is why the government is the one that's fit to standardize who can be a good parent, and then why it's justified for us to punish it. Why it's justified for us to impose a standard prior the parents having a children. Why this needs to be preventive measures and not curative. No, first, let's talk about why the government has the right to standardize who can be a good parent at the end of the day. First, I think the most important duty of the government is to protect their most vulnerable actor. And we think that the main demography of a vulnerable actor is children, ladies and gentlemen. Most of the times when they are facing hardships, they are the one that is left with the least protection because they do not have the economic power. They do not have a position in society where society believes in them, ladies and gentlemen. Because oftentimes the society perceives them as someone that does not know enough and easy to manipulate. Therefore, their position is severely vulnerable. And we, as the government who has the resources, needs to step in and protect them at all costs, ladies and gentlemen. Secondly, we believe that government is the only body that exists that has enough power and resources to gather and crunch the existing data to be able to generate a list where you can at least say that these are main category of you being a good, what is constitute of a good parent at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. And then thirdly, we think that when someone is born, they become a member of the society at the end of the day, right? But here's the thing. A world where people are starting to have children, there's a burden of the government has a burden of it, because then there is this collective action that's happening, because suddenly everyone wants to have a children, and since not everyone is fit to become a children, this requires a regulation. Secondly, let's talk about why this is have to be preventive and not a curative thing. No, the harm of having an abusive parent is way too big, ladies and gentlemen. The impact that you're going to have when you're raised in a household that is not fit to raise a human being is a lifetime sentence towards someone. I still struggle with commitment and having a close relation with other human beings because I distrust people that much, because I fear if I trust someone and let my guard down, they're going to stop beating me up and then using my words against me. I still fear when people raises their voice because it reminds me so much of how my mother used to raise her voices at me and beat me up until I bleed just because I break the plate, ladies and gentlemen. I still struggle with massive insecurity because my mother used to tell me that I'm fat and I'm not smart and I'm not worthy living, ladies and gentlemen. I still carry this burden even though I have no longer lived with her for 3 years. Those harms exist and it ingrains our identity, ladies and gentlemen. So we do not think waiting until these atrocities happens is when we can move, ladies and gentlemen. The government need to step in before all those atrocities happen because the harm is too big and we cannot have that. Just Like, we do so many preventive measures at the first place for terrorism attacks, even for driving, ladies and gentlemen. We do preventive measures to that. Why can't we do another preventive measures for something as impactful as a family unit? We are very proud to propose.
We thank the Prime Minister for that speech. To open the case for the opposition, I would like to welcome the Leader of Opposition. Hear, hear.
Okay, thank you. Wait, let me set up my timer. Okay, so I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. Panels. We think that in the status quo, yes, there exists cases of abuse, right? There exists cases of parents who neglect their children, right? But most importantly, there are also cases of underprivileged parents, for example, who work so hard for their children. Underprivileged parents, for example, who against all odds manage to raise their children to become good people, and so on and so forth, right? And we think that those are the things that we should fight in the status quo, right? The equal right for everyone to have children, and in order to ensure that everyone has the right, that every single person has the right for happiness, for motivation, which I will explain later in my arguments, right? What do we stand for in opening opposition, right? We say that everyone should have the right to have children, regardless if regardless if they, for example, have regardless if they have inherent parenting abilities, and so on and so forth. And that is exactly why we think that that we should not limit these people's abilities to have children by insisting that they have to gain a license in order to have children in the very first place, right? All of my rebuttals will be intertwined in my speech, right? So what am I going to say in my speech? I'm going to tell you two things, right? First of all, I'm going to tell you why it is not justified, why limiting people's abilities to have children is not justified, and secondly, I'm going to explain to you why it's exactly going to be bad if we force people to pass a test before they can have children, right? So first, why it is not justified? 3 points, right? First of all, you limit the rights of your people, and secondly, you do not allow your people, you do not allow your citizens to grow in your citizens to grow. And secondly, we say that the status quo is progressive, right? Moving on to my second point, you limit the rights of your people, right? We say that having a family, having children, for example, is the source of some people's happiness, right? But they think that life is so difficult, they have to work every day, is so difficult, to have to face hardships in life is so difficult, that the only way that they can be happy is when they are with their family, right? When they are with their children, right? When they hold their babies for the first time, for example, when they have to, when they feed their babies, when they stare at their baby's face, when they sleep at night, and so on and so forth, right? That's exactly why we think that the moment that we no thank you, the moment that we limit no thank you, the moment that we limit people's right to be we limit people's right to be to have the children, that's exactly when the moment that we limit one of their most basic rights, which is to live a good life and a prosperous life, right? And secondly, let's move on. Oh no, thank you. Let's move on to my second point. Why this does not allow your people to grow? We think that parental abilities is not it's not instinctual, right? It is something that you need to grow. It is something that when you are 15, for example, you did not think that you would want to be a parent, for example, but when you have a kid, for example, you love your kids so much that you are willing to learn, that you are willing to become a better person for your children, for example. That is exactly why the moment that you limit these people's rights to have children, you limit them to become a better person, right? You limit them to gain the parental abilities, right? Because parental abilities is not something that is inherent. You are not born loving babies, for example, but you grow to love them. You grow to want to raise them to become a better person, and so on and so forth, right? And lastly, we said that status quo is progressive, right? Right now, people are already thinking about their eligibility before they have children. Are they mentally stable? Are they emotionally stable? Are they financially stable, for example? They know how heavy a burden is to raise children, for example, how expensive it is to send them to schools, how expensive it is to spend money spend money for their necessities, and so on and so forth, right? We said that this works both ways, right? Either those people who are privileged, those people who live in good cities, in urban areas, for example, and also those people who live, for example, in less developed regions, for example, they're going to be too busy, for example, thinking about whether they can continue working or not, whether they should stabilize their economy first before they can have children, and so on and so forth, right? We say status quo is progressive also in the form of that there are existing mechanisms in order to tackle abuse, right? That there are punishments for people who abuse, for example, that they can go to jail, that you can report them, that there is social judgment, and so on and so forth for these people who are abusers, right? And we say that exactly if you want to protect children, exactly if you want to extend your protection to all of the children, no thank you, I do not accept your eyes, exactly why you need to enforce these mechanisms instead of creating a new one, right? Exactly, you need to enforce the existing mechanism of for example, sending people to jail when they abuse, for example, so that you can protect everyone, right? Of a government's mechanism only protects those who are, for example, who only protects those who have not been born yet, only protects those of the future generation, for example. Meanwhile, if you enforce the status quo, if you, for example, if you enforce the laws for abusers, for example, you can protect the people who are being abused, and you can also protect the people who are going to be abused in the future, right? And for those reasons, we think that exactly it is not justified for the government to force people to take a license before they can have children, right? Now let's move on to my second argument. Why is having children so important, even for those people who do not seem like they deserve to be parents, right? So for example, in the best case, right? So for example, people who are previously bad, for example, people who are previously poor, people who would not pass the test, for example, we think that yes, maybe children are unexpected for them, right? But we think that sometimes children are what motivates them to be better, right? Children are what motivates them to work harder, for example. Children are what motivates them to be gentler, for example. Exactly because they love the children and that they want to provide a good life for their children, right? The moment that you do not allow them to have children, you limit them to become a better person. You limit them to be able to provide for someone who matters so much for them, right? And that is exactly why we think that we need at the end of the day to allow these people to also have children, right? And comparatively, what's going to happen on our side of the house? People are still going to grow. People are still going to get better at the end of the day, and that if we strengthen the current mechanisms instead of creating a new one, we think that is going to be able to protect the current generation and also the future generations from abusers and neglects and so on and so forth. And that is why we oppose. Thank you.
We thank the leader of the opposition for that speech. We would like to welcome the Deputy Prime Minister. Hear, hear.
Hi, hello. Audible?
Yep.
Yep. Oh yeah, video. Sorry. Okay. Hi. Setting up my timer. Minum dulu. Panel, if opposition bench believe that it's a right to have children, a world that they need to defend is a world where individuals who are sterile by lottery of birth needs to be given children by the government. That's the burden of proof. Because that's not status quo. Status quo, we allow biological parents to have children. But when a person is sterile, they need to adopt. And when they adopt, there is a certain restriction, there is a certain requirement for them to fulfill, and in order for them to be able to adopt children. What they need to answer, why it's okay to have the different requirement when individuals have biological children, it's a comparison for a sterile person to adopt a children. I think that's a world that opposition bench needs to defend. Two clashes in my speech. Firstly, I'm going to talk about why requirement is important and why that's particularly fair, and what's the role of government in these certain situations. Secondly, I'm going to talk about why post facto revoking licenses, punishing individuals to go to jail isn't necessarily enough, and that's not how government works at the end of the day. Before going on to my clashes, yes.
What will you do on your side of the house if a mentally ill person gets pregnant accidentally?
Yeah, in that situation, we are okay with abortion. That happens in a majority of the case. When a person, for example, already got pregnant, then we're okay if abortion is what they wanted to pursue. So let's talk about accessibility here, right? I think opening opposition strawman our requirement. How would they say it? They say we are being discriminative towards underprivileged parents who are poor, for example, and cannot access our requirement. I think Noni never said that financial capacity would be one of the metric for us to give licenses, because we already also concede that in this situation when they are not financially capable, it's okay because they can still send their children to free healthcare provided by the government. They can go to free education. So financial capacity is not our reasons to discriminate. It's not our reasons to block their requirement and block their licenses, right? I think that's the kind of characteristics that we want to pursue. Especially, I think this is very important to say that mental health, mental assessment, and something like that is actually a fair characterization and fair metrics. Is exactly because opposition said that individuals, when they want to have children, they're willing to learn, right? In this situation, I think opposition technically believe that individual can get better, right? I think if a person, for example, is rejected of this license the first time, according also to their logic, these individuals could learn and become a better person prior to having children and applying the licenses again, right? But what's exactly worse on their side of the house, right? Because they say that the willingness to learn and the motivations to be better comes from the children itself. When they already hold the children, when they already hold the baby, they become more caring persons. I think this is a huge gamble, and I think this kind of person is actually a bad person at the end of the day. Why? Because what they fall in love with is not the idea of having children, but physically this particular children that they think that they own now. They fall in love with their new property, their new belongings, right? I think in this certain situation, these individuals would tend to be loving only to a certain conditionality of what the baby looks like right now, right? I think these are individuals who, to begin with, is insincere when they love these children at the end of the day. They are not ready. The fact that they don't pass the mental assessment in the very first place, but they can be loving. I think these are individuals who loves conditionally. So in certain situations, for example, when these children obey them, these people would tend to be more aggressive again, and therefore would have the anger management issues again, right? But okay, let's talk about what if this certain parameter that we set isn't fair and isn't accessible, and people cannot grow themselves to fulfill this requirement. I think that this is still actually okay, right? Why? I think government doesn't work in a way that they guarantee accessibility. I think most of the time government works in a way that are pragmatic to reach their certain goals. What do we mean by this? Let's talk about driving licenses. Sorry, Daryl, I take on one POA. Let's talk about driving licenses, right? When we talk about driving license, we work on the basis that there is a possible of collective harms. So I think that it's easy to equate this because there's a possibility of collective harms that occurs whenever a car crash, that it harms other people. The same thing could be analyzed with having children. So whenever a failure happens and the car, which is this case the children, causes problems, these are collective harms. So I think government always prioritize the pragmatic interest over accessibility. We know that it's harder for poor people to get driving licenses because it's hard for them to get a car to begin with, right? And when they do, for example, drive other people's car, we still require them to have licenses because the collective harm is too big. But secondly, I'm also going to use the driving license analogy for my second clash. Why we cannot do post facto? I think the proposition coming from opening opposition is that we do a post facto punishment. So when people already do the harm, then we can punish them by revoking their license and put them in jail. The first problem with this is that I don't think it's mutually exclusive. We also are willing to do that. We want to punish people when, for example, they already get their license and they grow out of the character and they become a worse person. We all punish them when they attack their children, right? But the second thing is this, right? I think the burden of team opposition is to argue why government never works in probability, why government only works in giving a requirement in an absolute condition that the deed have been done, the post facto. I think it's possible for government to work on the law of probability. If you drive a car without a license, it's not a death sentence. You could possibly survive. You could possibly not hit everyone, but that's still prohibited by the government if you don't have the license, because the probability of you crashing a car if you don't have a license is higher, right, than people who already owns the license. So I think this is how the government works, because the data sets are available and there's a possibility of you calculating the probability of chance that is going to break or not, then government could do this. But most importantly, I think, is because the harms is irreversible towards the individuals itself. Not only the collective harm, but the harm towards the children itself is irreversible. So at the end of the day, post facto, you punish this individual after, but you don't necessarily prevent harm to happen to begin with, then this person is permanently scarred and personally traumatized, and we don't want to happen. We think this analysis is important as the debate. That's their burden to prove otherwise. We beg to propose.
We thank the Deputy Prime Minister for that speech. We would like to welcome the Deputy Leader of Opposition to close the opening half of the debate. Hear, hear.
Am I audible?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Mr. Madam Chair, I think opening opposition think models from the opening government is that still blurry, right? On how their models coming from OG and on how they have listened and so on and so forth, but they don't clearly explain if that someone or individual that not having license and then they have the case of accident of having children that we have in status quo, they are being punished or not, because we think it will going worse under their side of the house. Because let's take a look on the status quo itself. In the context of readiness to have children, sounds good and convincing, right, to label someone ready with this license. Meanwhile, we know that's the reality, that first parameter of being ready is too abstract, right? And second, we know that having children is like basic need, and and the option on everybody to have children, because they know when they have children in status quo, we can see on how hard the burden to have children is itself. In status quo, we know the existence of a lot of people that are afraid to having children because they know how hard the burden it is, right? So we say this license, we think it's so unachievable in their side of the house, ladies and gentlemen, and it's so blurry models under their side of the house. That's what OO want, is that all layers of people have equal right to having children, because we think status quo is progressing, like we have this sex education and we have KB that government provides. So these prospective parents also have they kind of offer them kind of incentive to being ready, ladies and gentlemen, because we
speaker that already say to you, because we don't consider what privilege can having children because it is their right to, Mr. Madam Chair. So I will give two things in my debate. That first, why with the existence of lessons, it will harm the perspective of parents, and second, which side that will bring better situation in status quo. That first, they say this license is so good for them to have like incentive to learn, to have this underprivileged have willing to learn. We say it is knowledge, and gentlemen, this license is not make them have a willingly to learn, because we know the context on the poverty in society who in poverty condition, they busy to searching money for themselves, and gentlemen, and so on and so forth. So we say they not willingly to learn. Meanwhile, under our side of the house, how they got readiness itself, ladies and gentlemen, but not from lessons, we think, because in our side, when they already have children, that is stigma and environment that force them to learn, ladies and gentlemen, how to grow their children, and so on and so forth. And they know the burden when they have children, so they will taking their kids going to school, and so on and so forth. Because in our side, government already already give the help, right, like welfare and so on and so forth for them, like scholarship for them. In Indonesia, we have dignity and so on and so forth. So we think in our side of the house, we do not limit these people rights, right? In their side of the house, with the existence of this license, it will very limit their rights, ladies and gentlemen, and it's very significant of the country itself, because the country itself will not have a good inheritance, and then because we cannot say the good inheritance, like good future generation, only coming from the privileged one, right? We also acknowledge, ladies and gentlemen, there's underprivileged people also that willingly to have children, ladies and gentlemen, and we said to prevent the overpopulation itself, we still have a status quo under our side of the house, ladies and gentlemen, with the existence of KB and so on and so forth that government already provides. So we think in their side of the house, it will be very, very worse, ladies and gentlemen, from the country itself to develop, ladies and gentlemen, because they will lack of generation and so on and so forth under their side of the house, right? Meanwhile, under our side of the house, it will be so much betterment, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a lot of generation that can be potential, because we have a status quo itself that helping them for grow, and we can prevent overpopulation that with the proposal that with what happened in the status quo, like KB and so on and so forth, right? And in privileged people one, we think it is very hard to, ladies and gentlemen, for them. It is very hard because we think this privileged one nowadays don't have incentive to have children, because they know very hard to having children, right? So they will not have this incentivement to have license and so on and so forth. But even if they have, we think it is just a little amount of number of society, ladies and gentlemen, and we think this is so bad for the country itself to develop, ladies and gentlemen, in the end of the day. So we say this proposal coming from government is so bad, ladies and gentlemen, and why we say this license is so harm for the betterment of this prospective parents itself, that they have option, and for the country itself, because this country need to develop too, right? So, and coming to my second perspective, which side that will bring better situation in status quo. Let's compare what happened with children, what happened with this society, right, that have license or do not have these models of license and so on and so forth, right? So we think in our side it will be better, ladies and gentlemen, because if they say the existence of toxic parents and so on and so forth, like the case of abusive, we have a counter, right, in the status quo on law enforcement and so on and so forth. In the side of the house, it will be very bad, ladies and gentlemen, because this license will limit these people, right, that do not have that capability enough in the first place. Meanwhile, they can still learn, ladies and gentlemen, after they have children, right? And we say we still have preventive too. In the parents also, in the parents level, it is very bad, ladies and gentlemen, for them, because they do not have right in the first place to decide, ladies and gentlemen, this they want to have children or not, ladies and gentlemen. So we say this is very bad and not give the better situation in the status quo if we run with government bench proposal. Under our side of the house, it will be betterment, ladies and gentlemen, when we stick in the status quo, we spread sex education and so on and so under our side of the house, and it will be so much better under opening opposition work. So vote for opening opposition. Thank you.
We thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for that speech. To continue with the closing half of the debate, I would like to welcome the Member of Government. Here, here.
Okay, starting in 3, 2, 1. We on the closing government, we are going to give you new context on why then this has to be, that this problem that is already existing in status quo, on how there is children that is abused, on how there is children that live in poverty and they cannot get this out of the cycle of poverty. We are going to give exclusive reasons why the government has to fix the problem with this motion, and not other mechanism like increasing the quality of and quantity of existing mechanism in status quo like welfare programs. Now, in status quo, we already have mechanism like social programs and organizations to protect children. Yes, we already have that. And just because we are going to implement this motion doesn't mean that we are going to abandon those mechanisms. Instead, we will keep on those mechanisms, but we will take this additional measure to make sure that those welfare programs wouldn't go into waste, that these resources that the government already spend so much money on will not be just a waste. Because, for example, you give food coupon, but these families are so poor and they have too many children that they cannot increase the quality of their life. And that's why then we think that social welfare programs can work better on our side of the house. And another exclusive reason why it has to through this mechanism where we create a license as a qualifications for parents to have children is because we have to see that the government are operating on limited resources, right? And the country has so much problem that the government has to take care of. We have to still build infrastructure. We have to still take care of how our healthcare programs have to be able to cater to everyone, on how we have to create massive job opportunities. And there is already so much on the government's plate that they have to balance, and that the government also have limited resources. And we also see on how then the poverty rate is very high. There is existence of slum areas, and that's why as a government we need to use those resources responsibly. Because if for example the unqualified parents decided to have kids and those kids grow up to be like the parents cannot get out of the cycle of poverty, so these families will be the one that the government has to support, right? The government will have to spend their money on it. When they are sick, they are going to use the healthcare system, and government will have to provide food coupon or subsidies for these families. And that's why we differ from our opening government, in which then we give additional context on why then we have to also take a pragmatic approach on how then we just don't have the resources to be able to protect everyone. But before that, yes.
Why is it that the poor don't deserve to have their generation continue living, and rather needs to stop just because they're poor, and when it's usually the fault of the government that they're poor?
Okay, so the opposition team have been saying that everyone should have the right to have children, and that they are going to protect both the parents and the kids. But I'm going to tell you why it's okay to limit parents' freedom, even the underprivileged parents or the poor people. First, we think that these parents, for example, when they make the decision to have children, even though they know that the children will not have a good life, that the children will have to still be stuck in poverty, on how the parents know that they might not be able to provide opportunities for their schooling. I mean, when these parents make the decision, they already have sufficient cognitive ability, right? Yet they make the conscious decision to have children when they are not capable of becoming one. However, the children itself, they don't get to choose, right? And that's why then we choose these children to be the vulnerable actors that we have to protect. And that's why that on closing a government, it's why we believe that it's okay to not give those underprivileged parents, for example, the right to have children, because it's a trade-off we are willing to take than the massive harm that is going to happen if those parents instead end up they have children, and how the children instead will suffer, right? The opposition also brought the arguments on how then these children is actually a source of happiness for the parents. My response to this is that children is not a thing with the sole purpose to make parents happy. Their existence is not for the satisfaction of parents so that they feel like their life have meaning, because these children already have a life, also have a life that we have to protect, also have a life that we have to fight for, that we cannot get them to be abused, that we have to we have to be able to provide them with education, with proper food, with nutrition, so that they can have a good life, right? And that's why the opposition team has to say first why it's okay to sacrifice the children's happiness for their parents when children is already the vulnerable actor here. And also the opposition might say that parents can still learn after. However, when parents learn after, they're going to have already been casualties, right? And we cannot afford that, as I have stated before, because these vulnerable actors, they are still in the development, right? They don't have developed cognitive abilities, they don't have safety nets, they cannot provide for themselves, and that's why we have to take care of them. And also, I'm going to give you additional benefits that is different from the opening government on how then we can actually make the countries be better. Now, we think that we can reduce the workload of the government so that our resources can be allocated to other sectors, for example, infrastructure or creating job opportunities. And that's why welfare programs can only happen successfully on our side. And we can stop the cycle of poverty, because these parents may not be able to get out of the cycle of poverty, right? That these kids will grow up not getting opportunities, they cannot get private tutoring, so they cannot get in prestigious university. They grow up having to help their parents work. They sell stuff on the streets. They have to work instead of getting their rights to play as their age. And the overpopulation and existence of slum areas where there is a high level of criminality, where the sanitary is really, really bad there, and the access of clean water is hard, on how criminality like drug cartels is very apparent there. And all of this is because the overpopulation and because how poverty is, and how poverty is still happening there. And that's why then we think that it's okay for us to limit these parents to have their children, because if they say that parents have the natural incentive to be better, we don't agree, because in status quo, if that's the case, then all parents should be perfect, but that's not the case. And that's why the government has to step in so that those parents that are not qualified will not be able to have children. And for that reason, we are proud to propose. Thank you.
All right. Okay, everyone can see me and hear me, right?
Loud and clear.
All right, cool. Start my speech in 1, 2, 3. Let's stop talking about countries and societies that popularly disrespects and devalues children as just tools for them, right? Because in this case, it's likely that the government is not going to change the norm much, even if you put this licensing thingy. Rather, they would probably enshrine them as ideals in these licenses because it's such a popular thing. And the people voted people who also believes in these things, like religious figures that also believes that children are supposed to be just tools for the expansion of the religion, so on and so forth, right? So it's unlikely that these things will change if that is the thing that is the problem that is identified by the government team. And this is also the general problem of both government benches, is that most of their arguments are principal arguments on equality by closing government, or protection prevention principles by opening government. That doesn't really matter in this debate because we all agree on these principles, right? No one made an attempt, however, to really mechanize how licensing actually makes parenting better. And I think that's what differentiates closing opposition as the best team in this debate. I'll talk about three things. Firstly, I'll deal with the principle. Does the government have the right to control women's bodies? And secondly, I'll talk about, is there one way of raising children? And lastly, does this policy actually incentivize better parenting? So firstly, does the government have the right to control women's bodies? And what OG came up as an answer is that yes, because we can punish someone prior to their mistakes when it's a collective harm that is irreversible. Also, it's because it's not really a death sentence. We're just taking away the license, so it's not really a really harmful punishment, right? So firstly, I'd like to argue that it's quite reversible, this thing. These harms that happen to children. Firstly, through way of direct communication with the children and parents, where they can talk it out and change the parents' behavior in the future, since I'm sure and most parents are acting in good faith as well and will most likely want the best for their child. But if it is really something that is super painful that the children have experienced, first, the children still survives throughout the parenting. So I would like to argue that the harm is not very harmful. But lastly, it's also quite reversible to things such as therapy that the children can also participate in. But we agree that most of the time it is quite harmful. However, the government don't have the ability to punish the parents still, because firstly, it's not the sole parents, the sole fault of the parents, right? Most of abuse comes from people who are super stressed out by the macro economy, by the fact that the government is not regulating alcohol and cigarettes enough as well, right? So most of the time, the government also shares a lot of guilt. No, thank you. But lastly, in regards to punishments not being severe, really, is it not severe? I think Stephanie's case highlighted how severe this will be to a lot of people who have accidental births, for example, who are now forced to do abortion, and also people who are people who are just taken away of their children and now have really bad relationships with their children, right? Not being able to fix that again in the future. And remember, this is prior to their mistake, right? Prior to their mistake actually being made. So first, you punish the children by killing them, and also you punish the parents without them actually making the mistake, but just guessing that they will make some kind of mistake. Then closing government came in and say, oh, poor parents are going to harm poor children. Firstly, I feel like this is an assumptive harm of the standard of happiness, because in many cases, parents who are poor rely on their tight-knit communities and those communities' resources to survive, like collective parenting. And oftentimes their children can be happy individuals as well. But secondly, we agree that this is a really problematic problem, but the solution is not class genocide and literally disallowing this group of people to have their generation continue, but is to give welfare to public schools so that these people can access education better. Generally to make healthcare much easier to be accessed, and childcare to be something that is a free service, for example. If there's resources that can make this licensing and the accountability on these licensing happen, which is very expensive, I'm sure that these resources can be used on these things as well. So let's move on to the actually important stuff, the practical stuff, right? Firstly, let's answer the question of whether there's one way of raising children. No, right? There's multiple ways of raising children, and we're not talking about being abusive or not. No, thank you. It's also talking about just a diversity of ways to be a parent. Do you want to be? Do you want to dictate on what the children should learn, or do you not want to do this? The problem with licensing is likely that the government will streamline it to only one thing, because the government is too afraid to let freedom be something that the parents have, because that might in the future be something that the government is liable on if the parents make a harmful decision based on this freedom, right? So it's likely that the government will be very limiting in this and create only one way that the children will be raised. Before 6, I take the POI from opening. Hello? Rizky?
No.
Okay, so let's move on to the most important thing then. Does this policy actually incentivize better parenting? And I think that this is the most important question that we only answer, because if this license actually create worse parenting, that then this license is in the same way useless as any other government policy, right? Most of the time, when you give a license, you are telling these parents that you are already excellent as a person. Then the culture that you make is that these parents would most likely feel righteous instead of being communicative with their children, right? They instead feel like they're already the best parents, and their children should always follow what these parents say. That doesn't create an adaptive parenting for these children that experiences a lot of different problems than these parents experience, right? So you're likely to create this culture that is very dictative to what the children need to experience, and that is really bad for the children who don't feel like they can talk to their parents. But also, when previously the parents can be communicated with and can be consulted with, now the parents won't want that, because if they admit that they've been a bad parent and they want to change, then that is an admission of guilt. So they cannot communicate to the children, they cannot communicate to other parents to consult on what better things that they can improve on. Overall, this makes the parents a worse person, because you make them a morally righteous person instead of a person that is open to change and communication. We're very proud to oppose.
Okay, so let's see what your notes are. Panji, can you share your notes?
I tell.
Yep.
Okay. I have note for the second speaker, the girl one. Okay. Huh?
The girl one. Wait. This is still first. This is boy. Oh, this one.
Oh.
Okay. So what do you get?
But I write down more about the first girl. That's a first speaker.
That's first speaker.
That's first speaker. Okay. Let me just tell the first speaker, Miss.
Okay, no worries.
Okay.
What's your note?
Okay, my note is she said there is cases parents who neglect the children, but there are also cases of underprivileged. Okay, underprivileged parent example who work so hard for their children, and unprivileged parent, for example, who against all odds manage to raise their children to become good people. And then people, I mean the parents, they will have good ability to raise the children because they love the children, and by the time their ability will improve, will be better by the time, because they love the children, and yeah, like that.
Okay, is that all?
And then children will motivate the children for being better. Yeah, okay, that's all.
Okay, and Syahdan, how's your note?
Okay, so from the video, I note down the first speaker of government team. Could I see Miss first, because I forget the person. Okay. So first of all, I pay attention about the background of her statement that becoming parents is privilege, because from the motion that this house require prospective parents to obtain a license as a condition to have children. It means, becoming a children is privilege, that before we have a children, we need an official license from the government. And also I heard a goal from her statement. The goal is to avoid abusement in household. And the next one, I heard two urgencies. The first one, upbringing for children, and the second one is completing parenting classes. And for the last is justification, that she stated to protect vulnerable actor from household.
Okay, very good. Tiara?
Okay, so I would like to share what I have written down from the first speaker, the same girl. So as a government side of this motion, she said, based on her personal experience about being abused by her own parents, her biological parents, it is said that why government should make protection by regulating license for parents to have children, is to protect the children from any kind of abusive action. And also her slide also proposed some suggestion. For example, that is established by government. The first is government can give protection from using the data to educate people. And also she mentioned that what abusive action have done to the victim, to the children in a future life, is cruel, and also it gives a really traumatic experience. It makes the children being insecure, and also make the children questioning their own self-presence and living in difficulties in the future. And I also want to share the notes from the deputy minister.
Okay.
It's the second girl.
This one?
Yes.
This is the leader of opposition.
Oh, leader of opposition. So he mentioned that why banning people to have children is bad is because by limiting the parents to have their own children, it means that they will limit people's happiness. And also the preparation and ready, the word ready, it can be done when the person already hold their own baby. So the parents will be what is that? Will do more, will be a better person if they already have a baby. So that's why giving a license as a requirement for parents to have children is a bad solution. And also there are many kinds of things that government should do. No, I mean, this one. And regardless of parents that have inherent parenting ability, parents can can have better personality, yeah, better personality after having children. Okay, that's all.
Okay, the last one, Faad.
Okay, I'll give you the point about this motion that it's from the leader of oppositions.
Mhm.
The first one is it's not the problem because when the parents have children, they will love too much. So that's why it's not the big problem, because when the way they want to get married because they want to have have a children, and they want to love the children so much. And the second is from the underprivileged, that it's about the pet or the poor guy or girl. They can be motivated to work harder because they have a parent. And I'll give you the point in the what's that in the opposition, the second oppositions, that
If
yeah, there is no way, to learn how to be a good parenting, certainly, but parent will learn by the good environment to force to learn about the parenting itself. That's it for my question.
Okay, that's good. So, from this, which team do you think win the debate, the government or the opposition?
The
opposition.
The opposition, I think, yes, because I got many points from the opposition that it relates to my mind, I think.
Okay, so the opposition team is more convincing, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, Panji
Especially
and Tiara?
for the closing, especially for the closing speaker. He
Opposition.
emphasized the main point perfectly.
Okay, Panji and Tiara, do you share the same opinion?
Yes.
Yes, I do think so, because I noticed that the second girl really, really slay. She's like
this one.
The second girl. No, I mean the second.
Oh,
girl.
the leader of opposition.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I agree, because the first government, this girl, she makes the case or the argument to one-sided. She thinks that everyone will be born into a bad parents. So she failed to realize that there are differences, there are variety in the society. So, okay, we still have 15 minutes, 14 minutes left. I want to do this trial. So we have a motion here. This motion is a proposal. So this house, oh wait, this is this one. This house advocates human colonization outer space. So the government wants to do a campaign on the human to colonize outer space, like we go to Mars, or we go to other planets to
live on
to colonize, to be a leader on that planet, to live on that planet. Okay, I need you to make a structure. You can choose. We cannot do with third speaker, because it will be difficult to do that. So you can choose whether you want to do second speaker or first speaker. Okay, I will give maybe 10 minutes. Oh, sorry, this one. Okay, so 10 minutes. I will check your notes on 11:27. Okay. Okay, has anyone finished the structure? Panji, do you want to share?
I am a second speaker. It means I rebut that motion.
Okay.
All right. So thank you for the opportunity. I will share my notes as second speaker. Okay. A long time ago, scientists do researches that humans should live in outer space, but they realize not all planet can be lived, and in the outer space or other planet, there is no oxygen enough, and yeah, when human have idea, people have idea to live in outside, it must there must be a technology to provide that, and but only rich human are able to pay that. And I believe there will be many social inequality between rich and poor people, and it tend to make a chaos in the earth, and the technology itself will make earth worse. Okay, that's all for me.
Okay, that's a good argument. Next one.
Me?
Yep, please, Tiara.
So I'm going to be the leader of Open Insight. The first is I would like to give reason why it is important to ban human colonization in outer space. So as we have already know that many human activities giving continuing impact to the earth, and we don't need to want that it happens to the other planet. And if it is accomplished in a long term, and also the human body is unfit for the planet's and environmental and also conditions, so this project is not worth implementing. And the insufficient oxygen and water supply will not be enough, will not be good for human to live on that planet. And on top of that, as my friend, as far as our group concerned, that to do this project, we have to prepare more budget to allocate, and also more preparation. For example, the advanced technology that can provide many kind of needs, many kind of basic needs for human to live on the planet. So we are proud to oppose this statement.
Okay. All right, and then Syahdan or Faad?
Okay, Miss. I would like to be the first speaker of government team, or
Okay.
we call it as the leader of a government team.
Mhm.
So firstly, I want to define 3 words from the motion. The first one is advocates, the second one is colonization, and the last is outer space. The first one is advocates. It means we are as government team, we agree that about that idea if human need to colonize in outer space. And then in the next one is colonization. It means the act of occupying people to staying in the Mars, for example. And the last is outer space. It means another space outside the world. And also I have to propose this to strengthen my our opinion. The first one is living in outer space. It means we create a new life journey. And the second one is new space has a better quality of oxygen because the researcher or scientists have already researched or discover some data. And also the first argument, it is the best way that living in outer space is creating new life journey because the world has already been full of building structure. And the second one is the researchers have data that living in outer space is the precise path to follow by communities. As the leader of government, I receive because who knows and who guarantee that human can stay in the world forever. Thank you.
Okay, very good. The last one, Fahad, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna choose the second speaker of oppositions that I'm gonna counter the argument about the government. And I disagree about the government about the advocate the human colonialism in the outer space. That the first one, I have to counter the argument of me that the population of Earth continues to increase while its carrying capacity and available research do not. And if the research of space are opened to use and viable life supporting habitats can be built. And the second is the argument of cost. As we know that it's really expensive if we want to colonize the other space to live there, that many people greatly overestimate how much money is spent on space. And it will underestimate how much money is spent on defense or healthcare. For example, in June 13, 26, over $320 billion had been allocated by the US Congress for the war in Iraq. And by comparison, NASA's yearly budget average only about $15 billion in a year. So it means like it will be the barrier for the nationalism of our human, that it will be hard to colonize outer space.
Okay, very good. All right, so I think everyone already has a good grasp on how to make a case using the structure. So next training, when we do a debate, don't forget about these structures, yeah? And we will also try for the third speaker next week. Okay, so thank you everyone for coming. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
Bye-bye.
Coach, I want to ask you, Coach.
Yep.
Do we have meeting tomorrow?
No.
No. Okay.
Miss?
Yep.
Because the previous training I didn't attend the class, can I ask the material?
Oh, we actually did not do the class because the Zoom schedule is was conflicted.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Actually have informed in the group.
Yeah. Thank you, Tiara. Okay.
Thank you, Coach.
Bye.